Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of our show. This week, of course, you all know that I love professional wrestling, and this show is all dedicated to professional wrestling. We have the Hall of Famer, Wendy Richter, from the world of professional wrestling. And then, of course, we have someone who should be in the Hall of Fame, Dean Hill. So we are excited about that show this week. Wendy, as you know, of course, from the WWF, that's the federation she was in, and then Dean Hill from OVW. So we are excited about them joining this week, and we're glad that you all joined us again this week. Thank you for tuning in. The Dreamhouse Nation loves it when we give out our email address, and that is dreamhousenation@gmail.com. That's dreamhousenation@gmail.com. Right in to win tickets. We are giving away some of the best tickets of the summer. We're giving away tickets to the Sonic Temple in Columbus, Ohio, May 25th through May 28th. Tool, Godsmack, Avenged Sevenfold, Queens of the Stone Age, Kiss, Rob Zombie, Foo Fighters, the Deftones. It is going to be an amazing event. Right into dreamhousenation@gmail.com to be eligible to win tickets to this huge event. So definitely don't miss out. Sonic Temple, May 25th through the 28th, Columbus, Ohio, historic Crew Stadium. Right in. Enjoy. Our guest tonight is the legendary wrestler, Wendy Richter. She's in several Hall of Fames. You know her from the WWF or WWE, but no, I said it right the first time. But we are excited about having her as a guest on the show, and she's going to tell us a lot about 350 Days, that documentary that we've been covering. Wendy, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I watched the movie, and I was in the movie. I think it was a great documentary. I think it was very realistic for the people that saw it, and I hope that it will be put on regular television so everyone else can see it that didn't go to the movies.
Definitely. I agree with you. I think it was a very honest portrayal of the wrestling business. It wasn't, over glamorified, or it wasn't over horrified either, because I know a lot of times documentaries, when it comes to professional wrestling, will either make it seem like it's a piece of cake, which is obviously not true, or they'll make it seem like it is the most evil thing out there. So I think this one gave a very fair and just story.
I do too, and I really didn't know what to expect. I just know the questions I was asked. But I thought, because I knew everyone that was in the movie, and I thought it was very realistic.
How did you get involved with the movie? How did they contact you, and did they have to convince you, or was it, right away you're like, I'm in?
Yeah, well, yeah, they didn't have to really convince me. I think wrestling, people don't really understand. It's kind of glamorized when you think about it, but there's a lot of traveling. It's very tiring. It's not all. I always said when I was wrestling that the 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes in the ring, that was the easy part. It was the rest of the day. You got to get up early, go to the airport, fly wherever, rent a car, get a hotel room, go to the gym, eat, and then wrestle, and do it again the next day, the next day, the next day. It's an exhausting lifestyle, and it's hard to have a family if you have one at all. I couldn't even have a pet when I was traveling because I was gone so much. And I'm an animal lover, so that was probably the hardest part for me. It was not having a horse or a dog, and now I've made up for it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I understand that you're an animal lover. Yeah, I was going to say you should have incorporated that into your character, into your gimmick, that you were an animal person, because then you could have brought the animal with you.
Well, that wouldn't have been fair to the animal either.
That's true.
Uh,
Yeah.
Some people did bring, like Jake brought his snake, and the British Bulldogs had their dog, but
Yeah, Matilda. Yep.
it was hard on the animal, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Coco with Frankie.
Yeah. I couldn't have brought my animals. The horse is too big. And my dogs are awfully big, too. They weigh about 150 pounds.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like you got some nice big dogs. So they're probably for protection and for cuddling with, I guess.
Oh, both. I show them, too. I've got the number one Anatolian in the nation right now.
Oh, yeah, you do the Westminster.
Well, I ended up, I'm not going this year. I'm going to do a wrestling convention the day before. I would have had to come back from New Jersey and then get in late, I think Saturday night, and then leave early Sunday morning and drive to New York with the dog, because I would have shown on Tuesday. So I decided I'm not going this year. But I'll probably go next year.
Exactly. There's always next year. That's the great thing about it. Is that's one of the events that, I mean, now don't get me wrong, I think it's a great event, but every year I would boo that event because as a wrestling fan, they would usually interrupt Raw and play that on USA, and I ain't gonna lie, I was so sad that every time I was, because you get used to Monday night, it's Raw, and then they're like, we're doing dogs. I'm like, I love dogs, but I with wrestling.
Well, they changed the date this year, too. It's usually the weekend, like right before Valentine's Day. And this year it's in May. So that was my fault. I thought, well, yeah, I can go to Westminster in February, but it's in May now.
That stinks. They're changing things around. Yeah, I thought it was earlier in the year. Because I remember that being ahead of WrestleMania. They would have to cut that one show or run it a different night, that kind of thing. So what was your favorite part about being involved with 350 Days of Wrestling?
I guess having the horses be in the movie too.
That was pretty cool.
Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, the horse that you saw in the movie was a rescue horse. He was an Amish buggy horse, and if they no longer are needed, they just sell them in the auction to meat buyers. So the horse was going to be slaughtered, and I still have them. I actually rescued about 12 of them. And at one time I had 8 horses, that's a lot. It's a lot of work.
Oh, I can
They
imagine.
eat a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the horses being involved.
Definitely. So it takes a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication, just like it did as a professional wrestler, a lot of commitment and dedication, your passion for your animals.
Definitely. But just being asked to be involved in the documentary, that was an honor. Yeah, that was a big honor. I was the only woman in the documentary, so it was huge.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, being one of the all-time greats, that makes sense that they would want to have you in there. Going back way before the documentary, what was it like growing up in Texas?
Would be honest with you, I didn't grow up in Texas. That was kind of a gimmick. I grew up in Louisiana, which was right over the border. But I went to horse shows, rodeos, quarter horse shows. I showed polled Herefords, which is a breed of cattle, in 4-H. So I had the lifestyle of a Texan.
Oh, cool.
It just sounded more glamorous. And it wasn't my idea. It was the promoter. And I just kind of went along with it. But, yeah, that wasn't true.
That's outrageous. You're telling me there was something about wrestling that wasn't true? What?
I was billed from Texas. I think people made a lot of their gimmicks up, but being a cowgirl, that was true.
Cool.
I mean, I still am. I'm in my barn right now,
Nice.
getting my horses' meals ready for in the morning. So when I get up, they don't like to wait. They want their food right now. They start banging the gate, thinking it'll make me move faster. So I get everything ready the night before, so their food is fast in the morning.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it's got to be a lot more pressure on that than when our cats just rub up against us in the morning to try to get their food. That's what.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me and the missus and my son, we have 2 cats, and all of a sudden in the morning they want to rub up against your legs so that you don't forget about them.
Well, I've got cats too. Mine all just rub against. They jump on me. So they think they're helping me. If I'm trying to stuff the hay bags, they'll lay right on the bag or the hay. It's like, can you move? But they're helping me. Or if I'm getting their buckets ready with grain, they get right on the bucket or on the grain, kind of in the way, so you have to pick them up. You let me know they want love too.
Oh, that's awesome. So when did you first fall in love with professional wrestling?
Well, that's a funny story. I was probably 17, and my friend, I had a car and she didn't, and she asked me if I could take her to the wrestling matches. And I thought, oh, okay. So we went, and the night we went, it was a women's championship match, the Fabulous Moolah against Vivian St. John. And I told my friend that if I was trained, I could beat Moolah because she won that night. And I did 4 years later.
Nice.
I fell in love with it from the first time I went to the matches.
You have several people credited with being your trainer. Who do you consider your true trainer?
Who all said they were my trainer?
Oh gosh, there were a couple of the tag team, like one of the young Joyce Grable is listed as one of your trainers. Of course, Moolah's listed as a trainer.
Well, she wasn't. That's a lie. Moolah wasn't one of my trainers. If anything, she taught me what not to do. She was an evil woman and very vulgar. I didn't like anything about her, but Joyce Grable, she helped me a lot. She recognized I had raw talent, and by us being tag team partners, I learned through experience, in the ring, and that I think that's the best teacher. I did train to become a wrestler, but I'd have to say Joyce Grable, Leilani Kai, Judy Martin. They were the biggest influence for me in the ring.
You and Joyce ended up becoming a very dominant tag team. You were the Texas Cowgirls.
Yeah, we were United States Tag Team Champions at one time. Nice. Yeah, I like tag teams.
So how do you feel about that? Do you prefer, the singles matches, or do you prefer the tag matches?
Well, it was fun being in the tag team because I got to travel with someone. When you're doing singles matches, you're traveling alone everywhere, and that's pretty lonely. So with having a tag team partner, I had a partner to travel with, and I liked that. We had a lot of fun.
Another one of those things that I don't want to call controversial, but I want to say is one of those things that's debated. What is the difference between Wendy with an I versus Wendy with a Y? Was that maybe just the promotion you were in? Because I understand at different times the I and the Y changed.
Oh, no, it was always an I. I just liked it.
Cool.
Yeah, I just liked the name Wendy. When I was growing up, she was the name is not my name, but a friend of mine always liked her name when I was a child. I thought, and I was a child when I started wrestling, so my brain hadn't matured yet. You know, your brain doesn't mature until you're around 25.
Yeah. Or in men, it never matures.
That's true. Yeah, you said that. No, I think a man matures sooner or later.
But yeah, I mean, it just sounds like some really great times back then on the road. Do you have any memories that you'd want to share about the Texas Cowgirls?
Well, a lot of times they would put the women's match on last or next to last, and by the time you got out of the building, you may not get back to the hotel till 12 or 1 in the morning. Then if you fly out at 7, I mean, there's times where I would tell my tag team partner, I said, don't even, and if we went out to eat or to a nightclub or whatever, don't even lay down. We're just going to take a shower, get dressed, and go to the airport, because if you lay down, you're not going to get up. And one time, I was in Japan wrestling, and I don't know how we ended up, but we went out. Well, that was back when discos were popular. Mm-hmm. So we went to a disco, and closed the disco, and the owner of the disco, he was Japanese. He said, would you like to be the disc jockey? And so it was just myself, my tag team partner, and the Japanese owner of the disco. And we had the most fun, talking on the microphone and putting music on and everything. And so when we left from there, the owner of the disco, he took us to the hotel, and he said, where would we like him to let us off at? And it was daylight then, and we were leaving that morning. I said, well, just let us off on the side. I don't want the Japanese promotion to see that, we were at a disco all night when we should have been resting up for our match the next day. And so we got out on the side, not knowing that was where the restaurant was. There was the promoter and all the Japanese girls. Everyone saw us get out of the car from being out all night, and and go in the hotel like it was nothing. And so that was kind of funny.
Cool. They probably thought y'all were a bunch of party animals.
Yeah. So I was extra tough that night, because I didn't want them saying, "Oh, you shouldn't have went out." So I can't even remember where we wrestled that night, but the Japanese girls are tough wrestlers. They really are. They're not that big, but they were tough.
So they also fight with the strong style?
Oh yeah, yes they do. Their whole mentality over there is so different than the Americans. Americans are kind of soft and lazy compared to them, most of them anyway. Yeah, those girls were tough. I didn't like Japan either. Well, at the time when I went over there, I was just 18. The first time, I never even ate rice before.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah. I had to stay at a lot of Japanese hotels, because the towns, a lot of the towns are small towns, like out in the middle of nowhere. And for breakfast, they give you a bowl of rice, white rice, and a raw egg and a minnow with his eyes and fins and everything. And that, I just wanted to barf when I see that. That was breakfast. I didn't eat it, though. There's no way I could have. Well, the raw egg, the minnow, no.
Yeah.
Well, now I like rice, but at the time we never ate rice in Louisiana.
Not even in gumbo?
Well, that's different. It was flavored. Theirs wasn't even flavored. It was just white boiled rice. There was no seasoning at all on it. Gumbo is different. Yeah, that's good.
So, of your many championships, which one meant the most to you?
Oh, the WWF did. That was the mecca of wrestling. It still is. Yeah, that meant the most.
Speaking of that,
And
with you being
go ahead.
with you being a Hall of Famer, are you planning on going to the events this year?
No, no, no. They didn't even ask me. No, they ask whoever they want to go. I'm hoping that one year Cindy will get inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I was hoping with it being out in Hollywood or out in California that they would want to go and have her as like the celebrity to be inducted.
Well, she's doing a concert in Australia at that time.
Oh, well then that wouldn't work, so that makes sense why they're not having her this year then.
Well, they really need to have it when it's in New York City, in her hometown. I think that would be the most special.
It does sound nice. I was going to say, when you went in, wasn't it Roddy Piper that inducted you?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a shame he passed. I had a lot of respect for him, and that meant a lot. It really did. And he was part of the Rock and Wrestling Connection, so that was appropriate.
Definitely. How much fun was that time period in wrestling? I mean, when you were doing, you had a cartoon and it had all the, the fans, and just how exciting that must have been.
It was very exciting. But I was traveling so much, I was exhausted just from the travel. Like I'd go on the road for maybe 8 weeks, and out of that time, I had a few days off in 8 weeks, and then I'd be off for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, or maybe 2, and then another run. That's how they did it. So it was very exhausting. Then you're away from your family, your friends, everything. All you had was a suitcase, and I had a carry-on bag and my wrestling bag, and that's what that's how everyone traveled.
That seems like that'd be a tough way to live.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So I don't miss that part of it. I miss the wrestling. I miss the fans because that was fun, but it was the other 23 hours that was really tough. Being in the ring or at the show, that was the fun part. It was the rest of the day.
So you mentioned, about the travel and all that, the toll that it puts on you. With that, it kind of reminds me, and I've heard people refer to it as being like a rock star, because how they travel so much and they're going from town to town and they're performing nightly. So, I mean, the fact that you were part of the Rock and Wrestling Connection really makes sense, that because wrestling and rock and roll really kind of seem to parallel each other in a lot of ways.
That's true. And a lot of people in the sport, I guess, did drugs just to numb the pain of the physical pain and loneliness, which is a shame because a lot of wrestlers have died needlessly from that, that did not reach a ripe old age. And I think it's parallel with the music industry, people traveling a lot.
Now, most people know about your Hall of Fames that you're in and some of the other honors, the Cauliflower Alley. I think what's a neat one that doesn't get talked up much is I understand you're an honorary member of the Midnight Express.
I forgot about that. That really got me a long way. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Well, you have what's called the full shelf syndrome. You have so many memories that the newer ones kind of push the older ones off. That's going back. That's like probably 82.
Yeah, so before the WWF days, back when you were in the NWA as the tag team champions, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going back a long way.
What was the atmosphere like at that inaugural WrestleMania?
Well, I certainly didn't know how big it was going. I knew it was big because I got to meet Muhammad Ali, Liberace, Mr. T. They were all there, and they were taking pictures of myself, Cyndi Lauper, Hulk Hogan, Muhammad Ali, Liberace. We were all in the shot, and my match was coming up, and I told somebody there, maybe Muhammad Ali. I liked him a lot. I said, I've got to go. I've got to get ready for my match. He said, if you go, that's the picture that they'll use. That's the shot they'll use. I said, you're right. So I stayed. He was a smart man.
Definitely. A very wise man. I mean, gosh, he's did so many great things in his life and his career. And then, and he's still helping people to today because he has that museum down in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, it's in Louisville?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali Museum's in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky.
Wow, I'd like to go to that.
Oh, yeah, you should.
Don't they have the Noah's Ark out there, too?
Yep, that would be a little north of there, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'd like to go to both of those.
Oh, yeah, because they got that, and then the Noah's Ark people have another museum that's nearby there as well. That is, so it's got the Noah's Ark, and then there is they made a museum there first, and then because it was going so well that they decided to make a whole thing just the Ark, and it's full size. I mean, it's remarkable.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yeah, I definitely recommend around the holidays because they go all out for it with lights and just the animals, and it really is a once in a lifetime experience.
Well, the next time I go there, I'm to Louisville. I'm going to the Ark.
Definitely. So you've been retired for a little bit since 2005, and fortunately, it seems like you've behaved as opposed to a lot of the wrestlers because they get the bug, it bites them and they want to get back in the ring. Were there any times where you were like close to going back in there?
No, because when I left wrestling, while I was still in wrestling, I was going to college, and I got first I got my Associate of Science degree, then a bachelor's degree, then a master's degree. So I ended up making more money being a therapist than I did as a wrestler, because in wrestling, women didn't make much money. You could be the main event and you would make less than the opening match that a man was making, which is sad. So I think a lot of men, when they stop whatever their career was, they kind of lose their identity. That was their life. And I had started a new life by going to college. I went to college for like 12 years because I was wrestling and just going to school, 1 or 2 classes a semester. And so it took longer. But I didn't need to go back to wrestling to earn a living. I was making a better living with my degree than I did in the ring. So that was easy.
Definitely. And not just, making more money, but helping so many people. I mean, with physical therapy and occupational therapy. I mean, those are some of those real great things that can help so many folks. My son, because he's got some medical issues, he's had both, and it has made just a world of difference in his life. So, I mean, that is just remarkable that you are able to, commit yourself to helping folks like that.
It's very rewarding. It really is. That saying, if you love what you're doing, you'll never have to work a day in your life. That's how I feel. That's how I felt about wrestling and occupational therapy. I enjoy both of them. And I'm a people person. And I think I'm a natural caregiver. I know that's hard to believe being a wrestler, but I really like people, and I like helping people. Maybe not the person I'm wrestling in the ring, but everyone else, I give them a shirt off my back.
Awesome. Well, Wendy, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. We are excited about the documentary, 350 Days. Are there any websites, any social media that you would like to promote?
Well, you know what? I don't even watch television. After the election, I canceled television. They wouldn't get the news channel I wanted. I wanted a conservative channel, and that's not what it wasn't on the agenda. So I don't even watch television, and I very seldom ever go on Facebook. So I'm kind of out of the loop when it comes to media.
No worries. It's all good. It has been truly a pleasure to have you on today.
Well, the pleasure was mine. Thank you so much for thinking of me and inviting me to your program.
Sonic Temple Art and Music Festival is back at historic Crew Stadium in Columbus, Ohio, with the Foo Fighters, Tool, Avenged Sevenfold, Kiss, plus Rob Zombie, Deftones, Queens of the Stone Age, Godsmack, and more. Memorial Day weekend. Passes are on sale now at SonicTempleFestival.com for only $10 down.
Our guest today is the legendary commentator from OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling, Dean Hill. Dean, thank you for joining us today.
It's my honor to be here.
So tell us a little bit about what is Ohio Valley Wrestling? What is OVW?
Well, Ohio Valley Wrestling is actually started out and still is, was a training school. And how this all started was a gentleman that I knew for my years in wrestling at Louisville Gardens. Started off as one of his early characters was Sergeant Danny Davis, and he became friends with another wrestler by the name of Ken Wayne, and they decided to branch out into tag team and started what was called the Nightmares. And Nightmare Danny Davis, after many years of being involved in professional wrestling and what was called originally the CWA, later transferred into the USWA loop, which was Nashville, Louisville, Evansville, Jonesboro, Arkansas, back to Memphis. And that was the circuit that Jerry Jarrett and his mother, Christine Jarrett, ran. And Jerry Lawler was a partner in that, a minor partner in that as well. And so Danny was running that circuit. And, every once in a while you'd branch out, you do Loser Leaves Town. Next thing you know, you're in Texas for a couple of months or whatever. But he had, he'd gotten to the stage of his life that he was tired of living out of hotel rooms and a suitcase. And he decided that he wanted to settle down, lived in this general area, had family in this general area, but he did not want to leave professional wrestling. So the obvious thing for him to do was to open a wrestling school. That's what OVW, or Ohio Valley Wrestling, that's where that came from. And as you know, from you're in Cincinnati area, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Cincy, northern Kentucky, down through Louisville and across the river, everything down through the Ohio River was and is considered the Ohio Valley. So since he didn't want to be just stuck in just Kentucky or just Indiana or whatever, that's where the name came from. And is that something you need to pick up?
Oh, no, that's okay.
Okay. So that's how that started. I, for 24 years of my life, starting in 1972, I was a Louisville City police officer. And one day and how I met them was that I also ran security for 17 years at Louisville Gardens. And every Tuesday night, I would walk what I called then the bad guys to the wrestling ring. And so that's how I got to know Danny and et cetera. And one week the ring announcer couldn't be there, and they asked me if I wanted to do it, and I was a class clown. So hell yeah, I want to do it. So at the end of doing the ring announcing, Christine Jarrett offered me the job. So that's how I got into professional wrestling, and that's where I met Danny. And so one day I'm riding around in downtown Louisville, and there's a building down there that normally doesn't have anything in it. It was vacant at the time. And I saw movement inside. So I stopped and got out of the car and went over and looked in. It was Danny. Well, what are you doing? Well, I've decided to get off the road, and I've decided to start a wrestling school. Well, great. So I told my buddies, and we kind of kept an eye on his stuff over there for him while he was still branching this out, putting it together. But apparently that building just didn't work for him, and he ended up having an opportunity to go over into southern Indiana in Jeffersonville, an area that I believe originally was not a military complex, but it had some military attachment to it. It's called the Quadrangle. And it was a series of buildings. Some had some companies in it now, Johnny's Plumbing and Harry's Roofing Company, et cetera, et cetera. And he found a room on what's called Watt Street, which is W-A-T-T, one side of it. And he started out there, and then a larger building on the other side of the same complex called Mechanic Street. He was able to move into the larger building over there and started the training center. And if you go to a training center, you don't just teach them how to collar and elbow lock up and et cetera. The entire concept is to have them wrestling in front of people, how to interact with people, et cetera. Because that's a large portion of the business, if not, 90% of the business. Well, he wanted someone to do announcing for him over there when he had shows, and so he approached Jerry Lawler and asked if he could have permission to use me at his facility. And Lawler said, sure, you can use Dean all you want. So for a period of time, I would go to Louisville Gardens on Tuesday nights and ring announce for USWA. Then on Sunday nights, I would go over to the Quadrangle and announce over there for OVW. And that's basically how that started as a training facility.
Wow, that must have been great. I mean, living the dream, being around all the wrestling and being able to work with several organizations, top quality organizations, that must have been an exciting time.
It was an exciting time, and something that you don't realize how exciting it is as it's actually happening. But when you get back and you take a look at the past and what some of these people have become, I've been blessed to stand next to, take pictures with, shake hands with, give hugs to some of the biggest professional wrestlers of all time.
Nice. And how did their original partnership with the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, really propel OVW?
Well, if I'm recalling this correctly, because some of the stuff was just things that Danny took care of, and I even though I was in the loop, I didn't necessarily need to know. But if I'm remembering it correctly, Danny at one point held a title in NWA, and the whole idea behind a wrestling school is you don't just put them through school and then here, go out and good luck to you. You want to be able to have an organization that you can send a tape of this wrestler, have them come down without the wrestlers knowing that they're out in the crowd and observe some of these guys, for them to have the opportunity to go into a level above OVW. And I know we're going to get into the Cornette stuff here in a little bit. That's what actually brought WWF then WWE eventually in and kind of took that place. But that was the original concept of NWA, as I recall.
Nice. So tell us about the impact Nightmare Danny Davis had on professional wrestling.
Well, let me just say this. John Cena, Dave Bautista, Brock Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin, Randy Orton.
Yeah, I mean, huge.
This is the man that these guys had, and I should add into this, you don't just say Danny, you also say the hustler Rip Rogers, because between the two of them, that was the nucleus of OVW. Danny had the foresight. He had all the wisdom. He had all the abilities, but he also needed somebody that acted like his number one professor, because he couldn't teach everything all day long, and that's where the hustler came in. He was, when I first watched him for years, he was amazing because he could actually come to the wrestling ring and piss the crowd off for 5 minutes before he ever even got in the ring. He was hilarious in that way. And so, but Danny and the hustler taking this raw talent, because and we'll get into the WWE coming in here, but they would ship us some of their raw talent, and it could have went to a couple of other locations, but nobody was really doing it. I think Harley Race was doing something down in Texas, if I recall correctly, but I may be off by a state. But Danny's capabilities and his years in professional wrestling were so well known as the what a quality wrestler he was, that he was the obvious fit for this. Plus, we're pretty much in the center, so to speak, of America, not too far off center, and it was just a logical place for them to send Danny. And Danny brought in some of the greatest professional wrestlers of all times. And there are some guys that started off with Danny out of high school that did not even go to the WWE until much later. Nick Dinsmore was a high school graduate from, I think it's Providence High School over in New Albany, Indiana, right across the bridge from us. Nick came over and went to school with Danny. Doug Basham went to school with Danny. The Iron Man Rob Conway came to me one day and said, "Hey, I think I can do this. Who do I talk to?" And these guys, after being trained by Danny, Dick Dinsmore went on to King Eugene in the WWE. Conway got in with another guy that trained, and they had, I forget the name of their tag team, but it was like they were from France. Mm-hmm. These guys were just amazing, and they just came out of high school to Danny Davis, so they didn't have to be found by Jim Ross or whoever. They were just here, local guys. That's what he was able to do, and that's what he was able to provide for the next level.
Yeah, Conway, I think, was one of the youngest WWE champions of all time when he won the tag titles.
Yes, you may very well be right.
So you mentioned your role as commentator. People have equated you to being the Bobby Brain Heenan of OVW. How does that make you feel?
No, I'm not the Brain Heenan of OVW. If you would attach me to what I did in Louisville for OVW, it was more of I'm nowhere near in the league with someone like Jim Ross, but I did more of the Jim Ross role than Bobby the Brain. I didn't really manage anybody. I just did all of the announcing. I did all of the play-by-play, and I was fortunate to have sat next to some great professional wrestlers that did the color commentary with me. I started off with the Hustler Rip Rogers, Dutch Mantel, Les Thatcher, went into Cornette, and there was Kenny Bolin and Timmy Baltimore that worked their way in, a young man that and now is a broadcaster at the BBC called Martin Twinkle Toes Evans, that were part of the organization. Eventually, there's a young man that came here from Charleston, West Virginia, met me in a parking lot in a little bit of a rain one evening after I was finishing OVW, and introduced himself as Gilbert Corsi, and he wanted to come here and be my television partner because he was trying to get into professional wrestling. Now he's a 4 o'clock news guy here at WDRB. And you got to figure Al Snow into that as well, because Al and I were partners on TV for some time as well.
How did Jim Cornette buying into OVW lead to WWE, WWF, making OVW a developmental territory?
His mother's health. And his mom was a very close friend with Jerry Jarrett's mother, Christine Jarrett. And Christine was a matriarch of USWA Wrestling. And Jim would come there with his mom, and Jim was in high school and was taking pictures at ringside. And that's how he got to know everybody, as a 15-year-old kid, taking pictures at ringside. And his mom still lived here in the Kentuckiana area when Jim went on to the next level and went to the WWF/WWE. At one point, she started having health issues, and he needed to be closer to his mom during that stage of her life. And so he came down here and attached himself to Danny and OVW, and approached Danny with the idea of, I have the ear of Jim Ross and Vince McMahon, and they are looking for someone to help train their talent. And I'm going to come down here and live in this area, be near my mom during this stage of her life. And are you interested? And that took about 12 seconds for Danny to see the value of that. And so when Cornette came to work here for OVW, and Jimmy, there's two guys in this world in professional wrestling that could talk nonstop for 20 minutes and never say the same thing twice. And that was Jim Cornette and Paul Heyman. And I had the privilege of working with both of them in OVW. And Jimmy carried the load so much that I would announce the people who were coming into the ring, and every once in a while, Jimmy had to stop and take a drink of his Sprite. He was addicted to Sprite, and that's when I would fill in a little bit, and so that's how the show went. But it was Jim coming down here to be closer to his mom during that stage of her life that opened the door that ended up sending us, because I pulled into the back of the Quadrangle. We were still there. This was before he moved back over into Kentucky, which is what is now Davis Arena off of Shepherdsville Road here in Louisville, Kentucky. I pulled into the back of the Quadrangle over there, and that's where everybody's cars were, and they were all out there in the trunk of their cars putting their gear on. That's how raw that was back then. And I pull up, and these three guys walked up to me and put their hands out and said, you're Mr. Hill, right? I said, yes. He said, well, it's very, very nice to meet you. We're looking forward to being part of this crew. And that was John Cena, Brock Lesnar, and Shelton Benjamin.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, gosh, what an influential group. I mean, obviously at the time didn't know that it was going to be changing the world of professional wrestling.
No, it was the beginning of that. And I had other thrills before OVW. I'll tell you a couple of them very quickly. There was one gentleman that was working the USWA area. He was called the Master of Pain from the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. He went on to become the Undertaker.
Ooh.
And I had the honor of announcing him and working with him in the ring many, many times. There was another gentleman that they brought out, and he hates that I know this and remember this, but they brought him out one time during the Christmas holidays dressed up like a Christmas tree. And they called him the Christmas Creature. And he went on to become Kane.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do remember hearing about Glenn Jacobs doing that.
Yeah, and then there was another gentleman that his name was Flex Cavana, and he came up to me one day and said, Dean, I want to thank you for putting me over. I'm going to Connecticut tomorrow. And I said, well, I literally said this. I said, well, take a picture with me. I think you're going to be a star. And he stood next to me, and we shook hands, and a gentleman, I think Jerry Wilson, took the picture of us, and he went on to become somebody called The Rock.
Oh, wow.
They
Yes.
took him to Connecticut, and they changed his name from Flex Cavana to Prince Rocky Mahavia, and then that shortened down to The Rock, and the rest there is history.
Oh, my gosh.
Literally.
Yeah. So, I mean, just the overwhelming amount of folks that you've gotten to meet in your years and just the opportunities and experiences. And I mean, that's just scratching the surface, because I know at different times with OVW, they sent folks down there. Obviously, there's some of them we can't go into, but like the Big Show, I mean, and the Spirit Squad and different other folks.
Let me tell you a Big Show story. Danny Davis saved his career. They were upset with him at a certain time of his life because he was so great, not great. He was so overwhelming by his size, and they brought him into the business, and he started to take a few things for granted, and he started letting his weight go a little bit, and so they decided that they wanted to straighten him out, give him a little taste of how good he really has it, because he was taking it for granted. So they sent him to OVW, and he just kind of walks in and goes, "Why in the world? What have I done?" You know, and Jim Ross is just trying to get his attention, straighten him back up. So we were playing a weekly show at a little bitty gymnasium in eastern side of Louisville, of downtown Louisville, called St. Therese Catholic Gym. And he is standing in there as I'm walking in the door, showing up for work, and there's a set of steps going up to the second floor, and it's just a regular small gymnasium. And he's standing in there with his back against the wall right there by those steps. And these two young boys that must have been 7 or 8 years old walk up to him as I'm walking in the door, and they both look up at him and go, "Why are you here?" And you could see his eyes roll up in his head. He turned around and he walked straight up the steps, and I was literally climbing the steps right behind him. He walks in, he goes over and sits down by Danny and says, "Just kill me now." And Danny turned and basically lit into him. You have no idea what you could. If I was your size, I would be the biggest star in professional wrestling. You have no clue. Well, I mean, he just tore into him for it was like a 5-minute nonstop promo. And he turned him around, and then they put him with a guy that was we worked together on TV a lot. His name was Kenny Bolin. But Kenny was also a great heel manager. And so they put him with Kenny Bolin, and they were still trying to get his attention. Jim Ross called Kenny Bolin and said, "Sign him up for autograph sessions at every 5-star gas station you can find." And then called him and said, "If you're not at those gas stations when you're supposed to be, that's $20,000 a show or a gig." And so, and I'm just picking him, I said 10, I don't know, but they hit him with that. And he went there and he became very humble, and that changed his career. He went back to the next level, and he went on to stardom. But it was all because of Danny Davis.
Nice. So tell us about that amazing job Al Snow did with OVW.
Al is a great friend. We used to go motorcycle riding together. Danny was looking to sell OVW. He had got to the stage of his life where Florida was calling him. He had done everything that he wanted to do, crossed everything off his list. And he had a couple of different people that were interested in buying OVW, but he didn't want to sell it to just anybody. He wanted to sell it to somebody that he knew would protect what he had started. And all of a sudden, one day, Al and him started talking. One thing led to another. And Danny said, "You are the only person right now that I would even consider selling this to." So Al had a another friend that was involved in sports, professional sports, not as a wrestler or anything like that, but he came from the world of baseball and training facilities for people, teaching them how to hit and stuff like that. Chad Miller. And they came in and they basically took OVW. And I told myself that when Danny sold, I would probably retire because I'd been there almost 30 years at the time. That's a longer career than a lot of guys that's been in professional wrestling ever had. So when Al took it over, I said, well, it's probably time for me to go as well. You need somebody younger here. He goes, well, what I really need is a commissioner. So I left the desk and became the commissioner for Al. And Al not only kept this going, but his relationship and his knowledge of and the contacts that he had, not just with WWE, but with other wrestling organizations around the nation, influenced and or helped build up the amount of quality of talent that came into OVW. And what Al really did more than anything was he took it to another level globally through when all your Hulus and your Rukus, I'm killing that one, but that would take you nationwide. And that did actually, that's one of the biggest things that Al did about OVW and professional wrestling. But it also became the perfect time for me to finally retire. For the people that were watching OVW on the internet all around the world during the John Cena and the Brock Lesnar times, all those people knew who I was because they were watching me on the computer. But when he started to go global and attaching themselves to fans that didn't know OVW yet, those people had no clue who I was. So they needed somebody whose face was recognizable to them for the first time. That was Al. So in 2020, I retired, and Al took over the position as the face of OVW across the world, and they went global.
Definitely. I mean, his influence has been huge. And then bringing in ROH people, Impact people, I mean, just the different connections and still training up that next generation. I mean, it's just been phenomenal.
Yes, that's all Al's contacts. When I retired, a lot of that, he was just branching out into those people. So the inside information about how that occurred is stuff that I don't really know about, because I had retired at that point. But that's just another example of what Al has brought to the table.
Wow. I mean, OVW's had an amazing history, and it sounds like they still got a lot of great stuff ahead of them. Dean, it has been such a pleasure having you on our show today, learning all about that. Any things that you want to plug or promote before we let you go?
Well, I wasn't thinking about this until you said it, but I had an honor. A gentleman by the name of John Cosper, Cosper. He's a writer. He does books, and he did a book about wrestling in Louisville, Kentucky area called the Bluegrass Brawlers. And his promotion is down through, it's all one word, eatsleepwrestle.com. Somebody put something on Facebook about, hey, I met this star, and I thought that was great. And I responded to it, well, hey, I once met Frank Sinatra, and it's always great to meet somebody famous. And this person said back to me, says, you've done so many things in your lifetime and met so many people, you should write a book. And I said, who in the world would want to read a book about my life? And like 4 days later, John reached out to me because he had interviewed me for the Bluegrass Brawlers. And I thought it was great that I was on page 183 or something like that in his book. That was a big thing in my life. He said, all your years on the police department, your years running security at Louisville Gardens, your years in professional wrestling, all your years of all the music that you played, the bands that you played in. I think there is a book about your life. And so I was very honored that he wrote that. It's called See You at Ringside. But John Cosper has done, and I'm not necessarily pitching my book, but he's done books on many professional wrestlers and just the bluegrass brawlers. But anybody that might want to go to eatsleepwrestle.com and look up John Cosper, and if you want to pick up my book, you're more than welcome.
That is awesome. Well, we greatly appreciate you being on our show today.
My honor. Thank you so much.